from HR's perspective, what should we be concerned about with our electronics when we're crossing the border? And a lot of people would be really surprised to learn just how much leeway Customs and Border Protection has when it comes to searching the electronics that you carry.
Workplace law is complex and constantly changing. It can be hard to keep up, and the risk of getting it wrong can be costly for businesses. The Coffee and Law podcast is here to help HR professionals and employers stay informed. We'll cover what's changing and how to navigate real workplace situations and everyday people decisions. So grab your favorite warm drink and join us for engaging, practical, and educational conversations with top experts in workplace and employment law.
This podcast provides high-level general information. The perspectives shared by our guests are for educational purposes and do not constitute legal advice. If you have a specific question or concern, please consult a qualified lawyer.
Hi, it's your host, Amy Davies of First 30, jumping in here to share some exciting news. First 30's Onboarding Buddy platform has officially launched. Onboarding Buddy is an intelligent, AI-powered knowledge assistant that gives new hires instant answers using your company's own information. It's secure, Microsoft-backed, and simple to launch. No IT lift or setup fees, and it integrates seamlessly with your HRIS. So if you want a quick, easy, and effective way to improve your organization's new hire experience, I think this might be it. You can reach out to me anytime at amy@first30ready.com. That's amy@first30ready.com. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have and share a demo. Now, enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Coffee and Law podcast. I hope you caught our very first episode a few weeks ago with Nina Gupta of Gowling WLG. If you didn't, you can always go back and watch that. And today, however, I am thrilled to have Gabriella Gabriella, listen, we did this and I'm going to get it wrong, but I'm going to do my best. Agostinelli with
Got
us.
it.
Yeah, yay.
Ugh.
I was telling Gabriella, I'm just so bad with pronunciation in general. So thank you for your patience, Gabriella. And Gabriella and I had the pleasure of running up a webinar together last year previously. And oh my gosh, Gabriella, the response to that webinar was phenomenal. So as soon as I made the decision to do this show, you were one of my very first calls
Aw.
because you have such great insight. So today we're going to be talking about crossing the US border and some of the implications that employers and HR should know about,
Mm-hmm.
both for themselves. So I think we're going to get a lot of great individual advice, but also great advice for our organizations
Mm-hmm.
and, what HR can do to help prepare employees who are crossing the border or who have to cross the border regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's, I know last time, Gabriella, you recommended putting together a handbook. So we're going to talk about
Mm-hmm.
that. But with that, Gabriella, can you tell us all a little bit more about who you are, what you do, the law firm you work with, etc.?
Yeah, so I'm Gabriella Agostinelli. I am with Berardi Immigration Law. We are an immigration-only law firm in Buffalo, New York, and what we focus on in particular is employment-based immigration. Especially as, we operate right along the northern border, we work with Canadian multinational corporations all the time and service a lot of managers, executives, and professionals who need to come to the United States. We also help individuals start businesses in the United States who are from other countries. And anybody basically who has a dream of living and working in the US, we're the people that you call. Yeah, I've been doing this for quite a long time, but it's a really unique area of law, but one that I have found to be immensely rewarding.
And one that is just so important. Gabriella, I just want to let everyone know that if you want to reach out to Gabriella, her information will be in the show notes. And my producers told me to say, make sure that you subscribe to the channel and give us a 4-star rating if you think we're that good. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple, it goes a very long way, and we appreciate it. You can even set up alerts on YouTube to get notified about new episodes. All right, let's jump into our topic. So, the first thing I want to know, Gabriella, and you tell me if we need to start somewhere else. I mean, how you live your life would probably be a good start, but not that part. We can't start there. But I think we can start with what information or how should HR and employees crossing the border. So I'm thinking of HR prepping, but
Mm-hmm.
employees who have to cross, maybe they're HR leaders as well who have to cross the border. What am I getting organized, to take with me for the border crossing?
So let's back up and say, if I'm a border officer and I'm inspecting somebody who's coming to the United States, and that person wants to come as a business visitor, there's two things I pretty much want to be sure of when I'm admitting that person to the US. Number one, does that person really have the intention to only visit? If they are a business visitor, they should just be coming here for a short period of time. They should not be, and part of that is not engaging in activities that would require a work permit, which I'm sure we'll get to. And then my other question is, do they have meaningful ties to their home country for when they, so that's to show that they have a place to return to. So one of the things I tell my clients all the time when you're traveling to the US, and I'm going to tell you right up front, you're going to hear this and say, listen, lady, I think this sounds like overkill. But truly, truly, if you want to get yourself buttoned up and not have an oopsie at the border, there's two things you want to be sure to always carry in your back pocket. And I actually tell my clients, create a folder. One side of that folder is going to be evidence of your enduring ties to your home country. So your most recent pay stubs, some utility bills for your home, your last tax bill, showing that you do have a residence and a job back home. The other thing we want to see on the other side of that folder is proof of your short-term intention for travel to the United States. So if it's a business meeting that you're going to, let's get the Outlook email invite saying that you're going to be meeting somewhere and it's sometime at some location. If it's a conference that you're attending, I want to see information on that conference, proof of your tickets to that conference. And I also want to see your lodging information. Give me your hotel itinerary. If you have a rental car, provide that as well. All of these things help substantiate to the officer that your story matches your stuff. Now, 99% of the time, you will never have to show any of this. This is about peace of mind. This is about demonstrating to yourself and to the government that you have a plan that is rooted in fact of what you actually are going to be doing in the US. And there's one other thing, I also want to add to that list of what we should be including. If you're traveling on behalf of your Canadian employer, for instance, and you are coming to an event in the US, it really helps to have a letter from HR or your supervisor or whoever detailing exactly what you're going to be doing in the US, that at all times you're going to be remaining on Canadian payroll. You will not be remunerated by a US source in the US. It's a temporary trip where you're going to be staying at X location at Y time. This all validates to the officer that what you're telling them is truthful.
Yes, and that's really useful information. I wanted to add to that. Please follow Gabriella's advice because I have a friend who will remain unnamed, of course, but who did try to cross the border legitimately, was turned away, and came back a couple weeks later with all of the documentation that you just described, Gabriella, and no problem.
Mhm.
So this is one of those things we have become so unaccustomed to carrying actual documentation with us.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
is now critical. Times have changed.
Mhm.
Do the old-fashioned thing, get it all printed out,
Yep.
put it in a little do-a-tang,
Yep.
if
Yep.
people even know what those are anymore,
Mhm.
and prepare it for the border. Okay, so we have all of our documentation in hand. The other advice that you have given in the past that I thought was very useful is, so we can't tell everyone which border to cross, but you had recommended different types of border crossings and where it might be better for folks to
Mhm,
go?
mhm. So we basically have two predominant ways of border crossings. Yes, we can come through the sea, but most of us are not doing that, especially in this Arctic tundra where we reside right now. And that's going to be land border crossings. So for me, the one I always recommend closest to where we are is the Peace Bridge, which is actually the port of entry that has the largest commercial and passenger traffic across the entire northern border. And that because of that, they tend to have officers who are a bit more well trained and a bit more experienced. And even if the officer admitting you isn't that experienced, there will be a more experienced supervisor who can jump in if there's an issue. Um, so Lewiston, Rainbow Bridge, if we go towards Ottawa, we have Ogdensburg. If we go towards Montreal, we have Champlain. These are in Windsor. If we go towards Detroit, big ports of entry. Now, interestingly, Canadians, along with Dublin, Ireland, and Dubai, also have a pre-clearance location where we actually have Customs and Border Protection sitting in major airports outside the United States. So Canadians, when they do air travel to the United States, they actually clear customs before they even physically enter U.S. soil. Now, since the time we last chatted, Amy, for most people who are coming to the United States, they're not going to have a problem going through these ports of entry. But we've heard some pretty bad horror stories, particularly about Pearson in
Oh,
Toronto,
wow. Yeah.
about how people are being treated who are applying for work visas, people who are coming for business visits. Obviously we have to step back and realize with so many changes happening with U.S. immigration, it's often the folks who are guarding our borders who are hearing of these directives right as we do. And there's a lot of stress in their jobs. They're trying to figure out how to actually implement these rapidly changing developments that the executive branch is handing them right now. And because of that, their job is stressful.
And they're worried about their job, I bet, too, right? That they'll be exposed. Everybody's filming everything now.
Right, right. So,
Hmm.
they have a lot of stress on their shoulders too, where they're trying, when the message they're being given is national security, national security, national security, that's a big responsibility. So, all of this multiplied over the last year has made it a more tense environment through a lot of pre-clearance locations across Canada. So, I'm still telling my clients, if you can enter the US through the land border, do it.
Okay. Oh,
If
that's really interesting.
if
If you
you're
can.
applying for a work visa or have a complex business visit issue, come through a land border.
And you said that Pearson has, we can go through customs on our side. What about smaller airports? Like Billy
Mm,
Bishop is another one in
mm.
Toronto. Do we go through customs on our side or do we do it on the other side?
So as of now, no. Billy Bishop has not been a pre-clearance location, but it is becoming one.
Sure.
But I've always heard good things about Billy Bishop. And really, if you're and I want to stress this, if you were coming with your family to Disney World, you'll be fine through any port of entry. But be careful of really small ports of entry if you are applying for a work permit or if you are trying to enter and maybe you've had some issues in the past. Smaller ports of entry will have less experience tackling things like that. So it could go really well, it could go really poorly. Just
Yes.
be prepared.
Yeah. And so people are pretty stressed out about things. We hear stories, right? And you talked about just because it's newsworthy doesn't mean it's new. I
New.
still remember you saying that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's a lot of stress around devices, carrying your
Mm-hmm.
device. What if I have done searches on my phone or watched certain YouTube videos that
Mm-hmm.
don't seem to be in sync with
Mm-hmm.
um, what's going on in the US right now, which I'm
Mm-hmm.
not going to get into any of that, but you get I think everyone would understand what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
anything that's anti the current administration that you may possess on your phone. What kind of advice are you giving to people now about that?
So it's going to be really interesting because we are still waiting. To my knowledge, the Customs and Border Protection has not put forth data for this past year of its electronic search statistics. to see if there was a huge jump or not from the previous year with a different presidential administration of whether there's been more apprehension of digital devices or not. Truthfully, I haven't heard a whole lot about, now that a whole year has passed, I haven't heard a lot more stories other than what's typical of electronics being searched. On a personal level, you know, it doesn't affect crossing the border too much, but it has greatly affected visa issuance for people from countries who are not Canada, because Canadians are visa exempt most of the time. That if you have put forth anything that could be deemed not, let me say this carefully. If you have put forth anything that shows that you sympathize with terrorists, which you might hear and think, I don't sympathize with terrorists. Well, the United States government has deemed Hamas a terrorist organization. So if you're putting a lot of pro-Palestinian materials out there, there has been a very loose interpretation of what is pro-sympathizing with terrorists or not. If you put forth negative things about this administration, I still have not heard too much on the border crossing front about people getting apprehended. What I do think that we should do, though, is if you are somebody who does need to travel regularly to the U.S., and it pains me to say this because I believe in our Constitution, and that should be the letter of the law, but if you want to be smart about it, keep your opinions off the internet.
And that's what I was referring to when I was talking earlier about how you live your life. It's just we can't go backwards, but we can only go forwards.
Exactly. But the other thing, from a business professional, we can talk about that as well, is from HR's perspective, what should we be concerned about with our electronics when we're crossing the border? And a lot of people would be really surprised to learn just how much leeway Customs and Border Protection has when it comes to searching the electronics that you carry. If I'm HR and my people are crossing into the United States and they have proprietary information, how do I handle this? What do I do? Well, first, let's talk about what your rights are. When you enter the United States, an officer can ask to look at any electronics on your person. They can ask for anything on your person. You do have the right to say no, but they have the right to detain it. That physical electronic
Oh my gosh,
device.
to detain that electronic device. Is it going to be different if you're on the Canadian side of the border at customs or if you're on the American side?
So
Like,
if you're
if you-
entering Canada, that's with Canadian Border Services Agency. So I can't advise on what they would do, but if you
Oh.
are entering into the United States from Canada, those folks, Customs and Border Protection, can absolutely look at the
Detain.
contents. Yes, they can.
Okay, but my question is actually, if you're at Pearson Airport and you're
Yes,
trying to get through
got it.
customs, they can still
Yes.
detain it there.
Yes,
Right. Okay.
they
Thank
can.
you.
They can. So the other thing that they can do is ask for passwords, which again, you don't have to give them, but guess what? They could crack that too. The other thing that is a saving grace is that they are not allowed to look at anything that's stored on the cloud. They can only look at what is stored on the physical device.
Sure.
So what are some things we can do to mitigate these kinds of risks? Well, depending on how concerned you are about safety of this proprietary information remaining secure, I have clients who have their team wipe hard drives before they come to the US. One of the things you can also do is put your phone on airplane mode so you can't access quite as much material. Another thing I've had clients do, and this might be overkill at this point in the process, based on what I haven't and have heard happening, is get a burner phone when you cross the United States border.
That seems suspicious, though.
Right, doesn't it?
We've all watched Breaking Bad, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Outplacement and career transition support make a real difference for employees experiencing terminations or layoffs. Offering these services also reduces legal and reputational risk for employers. All of First 30's outplacement programs include access to a live coach, along with 1 year of access to our career transition portal, job search resources, and much more. Programs start at $985 per participant. You can find information about our programs and pricing at first30ready.com /outplacement, or reach out to us anytime at info@first30ready.com. So we know all about how to prepare. The only other thing I was going to say is we've heard a few incidents in Canada. I know of one, not personally, but I read about it, where people make an off-color joke at the border. Like they're being funny, or they're making a joke with their spouse or something, and they get turned away and then they get denied entry for several years after that as well. So it's like, no, don't make a joke, because that joke could cost you years of your travel life going in and out of the US, if that's what
Yeah.
you want to be doing.
You got to take it super seriously. Again, the focus these individuals have is national security. If you have given them any reason to believe they cannot trust you, they have huge discretion to turn you away. And part of turning you away is putting a little red flag on your file in the computer, such that whenever you swipe that passport to try to enter the United States, whoop, your screen's going to pop up with a warning sign. And that is going to haunt you for years.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's good advice. Okay, so next we're in the United States. Okay, we might be
Mm-hmm.
there for a conference. We might be there to go to Disneyland,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And now there's all this fear around ICE agents. Some Canadians have been detained by
Mm-hmm.
ICE.
Mm-hmm.
That's been pretty newsworthy here, but
Mm-hmm.
again, just
Mm-hmm.
because it's newsworthy doesn't mean it's new.
Mm-hmm.
So and of course we're reading about these horrific stories of people getting maimed irreparably. They're getting murdered in the streets, right?
Mm-hmm.
In confrontations with ICE. So, or just being there at
Yeah.
all. So what is your advice to people to avoid any danger for themselves, their colleagues, and their families?
Yeah. So one of the things, if you're a foreign national in the United States, um, there's a few things you should be doing. First thing, you should always carry on your person proof of your status. If you are here just as a business visitor or you're going to Disneyland, anytime you enter the United States, you're going to be issued something called an I-94 admission record. That's that whole thing where they swipe your passport. It will mark that admission to the United States. And there's a very easy website I can provide you so you could send the link
In the
to your
show notes,
listeners. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, please.
Where basically once you've been admitted to the US, you go to this website, you type in your passport information, and it will pull up what your last entry was. And it will also pull up the date through which you have been admitted to the United States. That is something you should print out and keep on you along with your passport. Because that shows that you have been lawfully admitted to the US through this date and you have not overstayed your status. And similarly, we should also do this if we're here on a work visa. But if you are here on a work visa, or if you have a green card or whatever, you should be carrying proof of that work authorization on you. So it's your approval notice, it's your green card. You must carry it on your person at all times. That is actual law. One that has been had to be dusted off since January 20th, 2025. But that is a long time law on the books. We have to be carrying that with us.
Should we have our passport on
Yes.
us at all times?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You should.
Thank
You should. And then, which feels awful because you don't want to lose it. Yeah, normally I
Absolutely.
like lock it in my
Yes.
hotel, right?
Yes.
But you can't be sure enough these days. This country is crawling with ICE at the moment. The other thing too is if you are apprehended by ICE, you do have the right to remain silent. But that doesn't mean that they're going to let you go if you do remain silent. And it is very important to know your rights. You always have right to legal representation if you are detained by ICE. The other thing is they can ask to inspect documents, give them the documents, and then hopefully that will be the end of it. You be polite. But then there are things like, what if they try to enter your home? There are very strict rules about what ICE can and cannot do. And one of the things they cannot do is enter a home of somebody in the United States unless they have a judicial warrant. This is different than a warrant from Department of Homeland Security. You do not, as the law stands, have to let ICE into your house if they just have a warrant from a Department of Homeland Security. They must have a warrant instead from a judge. A federal judge must issue a warrant in order to make you open your door and let them in. So my recommendation is, if ICE does come to your door, do not open the door for them. Ask them to slide their warrant under the door. If they cannot do that, you do not have to let them in your house.
Interesting. Okay. I have actually seen I've seen some videos where people have done actually just that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like they have a script in front of them that they're reading off
Mm-hmm.
of. And so I would say that in part of your preparation and maybe part of the way that HR can help their employees prepare is give them a script so that it's not like, oh my gosh, this is happening all of a sudden, because we go into panic mode,
Yeah. Here are
right?
my rights.
And
This is what you must do,
here
ICE. Yeah.
yes, exactly. So think it through while you're on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
It just so helps to be prepared. This has been so much information. We're almost out of time, Gabriella. Can you even believe it? Sure, we could talk about the subject for another hour or two easily,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't want to miss. I have my little mug here for people who are listening, my spill the tea segment. So we would love to hear a little bit more about a story that you have that might be surprising, or who knows, it can
Yeah.
be fun, funny, surprising, whatever you want. Spill the tea
Oh, I got
for
a
us.
story for you. And
Okay.
I want to preface this by saying I love my job. I feel deeply, deeply blessed to be a lawyer who is inspired by her clients, who truly feels great love and admiration for her clients. And 99.999% of my clients have just been the most wonderful, beautiful people. However, this past year, since we chatted, something did happen to me
Oh
that
my gosh.
was pretty wild, which is that I had a client who was here on an L1 visa. I got him this visa to come open a new office, an extension of a multinational corporation, now in New York City. Got that approved, got the extension approved a year later, and now we were about to file a green card application. And I noticed that after a while, that person wasn't responding to my emails. And then I got a bounce back saying that that person is no longer part of the company. So I wrote to HR and I said, what's going on here? And they said, oh no, this person was termed with our company June 17th. And I said, termed? We're in the middle of a green card application. He didn't say anything to me. So he then writes to me, this time from a Gmail account, and says to me, oh, no. I am still absolutely employed by the company. That person that told you I was termed, they're no longer with the company. They didn't know what they were talking about. I'm still alive and well within the company. I said, okay, that's very strange. Well, now put me in touch with HR, who is part of the company, and I will communicate. So he puts me in touch with somebody from HR email address. I'm having lots of conversations, lots of back and forth and we're getting ready to file the green card application. Everything's simpatico going on normally until I receive an email from a different part of the organization that says that no, that person was terminated June 17th, 2025. And in fact, he has not been with our business in any capacity, and we absolutely cannot file this. And what happened was, to try to pull the wool over my eyes, he created a new email domain and a fake HR account. And that whole time I was corresponding with him under somebody else's, under a completely different, fake, fraudulent,
Oh my
made up
gosh.
email.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
like to think my BS meter is pretty fine tuned, and something didn't feel right about this, and I guess that's the lesson that I guess the first time someone tells you they're no longer with the company, you got to believe them, because I just was shocked, and I completely lambasted him when I found out what really happened, and I said, we are not filing this. I am not returning any of your legal fees because I performed all of this work on your behalf, and I am encouraging the employer to pursue a claim against you for fraud. Never heard back from him again.
Wow.
But I was like, wow.
Wow. It's just such a good lesson in exactly what you said. If something doesn't feel right, do all of your due diligence.
Yeah.
And it's a good thing you had multiple connections at that organization.
Uh,
Thanks for sharing. That is quite a story.
yeah, that's some
I
tea.
like I always like to also tell people, even when they're, hiring someone or they're applying for a job and something doesn't feel right, do your due diligence with everything.
It's got to pass the smell test.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh my goodness. And there can be serious consequences for someone who does this under false pretenses
Mm-hmm.
down the road as well, right? Oh
Mm-hmm.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that story. Thank you for sharing all of your expertise with us. I'm going to make sure, as I said, the contact details are in the show notes as well. And I wanted to mention, too, that Nina Gupta, who was on our first episode, Gowling sponsoring some episodes of the show as well, she referred you with she has just the best things to say
Yeah.
about you all the time. And
Uh,
and I know that our audience knows her quite well, too. So it's
uh.
always nice to have. So it all checks out with you, Gabriella.
Good. Woo!
That's for sure. Yes. Well, listen, thank you so much. And I hope we get a chance to do another show one of these days. I know that a lot's going to change again. So we're going to need regular updates on this issue for sure.
I'd be happy to help. And anyway,
All right. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. And until next time, have a great few weeks.